What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be a little different. I'm going to go over a hand history of a live tournament I played on Sunday, where I bought in for $240 Canadian. And let's just say I ran pretty good and made a very deep run. So yeah, this should be really exciting. A lot of crazy spots. Let's get into it. So just for some background on this tournament, it was a $240 buy-in live tournament. Blind levels were 20 minutes, so somewhat quick, but it was a single-day tournament. One re-entry was allowed, and there were about 75 entrants. And I believe it was top 9 that got paid. So yeah, let's get into the first hand. So the first hand that was really significant in the tournament, we were fairly early on in the day. I had about 100 big blinds effective stack, and I looked down at 2 red queens. So action folds to me, and I raise it up to 2.5 blinds in middle position. The button calls, and then the small blind re-raises to 7 big blinds, which is music to my ears. But to my surprise, the big blind decides to cold call the 7 big blinds, which was really confusing. So when action got back to me, especially when there's a call to my raise, a 3-bet, and then a cold call of the 3-bet, I just think with queens it's a slam dunk 4-bet. You got to isolate to make the pot heads up and, you know, get rid of all the random equity that the cold caller has against you. So I decided to 4-bet this to about 20 big blinds, which I think going on the somewhat larger side here is good, about 3x the 3-bet because of the cold caller especially. Normally, if it was just heads up, I would go a little smaller, maybe like 15 big blinds, something like that. But I think 20 was good in this situation. The button folds, the small blind calls, and then the big blind tanks for quite a while and then folds. So we're going heads up to the flop. I am in position, and the flop comes 6 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 9 of diamonds. So not the safest flop, especially because I don't have the queen of clubs in my hand. And then when the small blind checks and it's my turn to act, I think on this board I need to go big, because I need to deny equity from all the flush draws and all the straight draws that they might be calling with. And I also just think a lot of the time they have like an ace, queen, ace, jack, ace, king type holding. So I really don't want to see an ace or a king come out on the turn or river. So I just want to deny equity right now and pretty much get the money in. So I decided to go for a really large bet. There was about 45 big blinds in the middle, and I make a 30 big blind bet. And the small blind tanks for quite a while and then decides to let it go. So that was quite a big pickup. It was really good to start the tourney, and yeah, let's get into the next spot. Okay, so the next spot I want to discuss was an interesting bluff I ran. So I'm under the gun, and the stack size is about 50 big blinds at this point. Blinds have been going up. And I look down at ace 4 diamonds. So I min-raise it from under the gun. I think that's pretty standard. The button decides to call, and the big blind calls as well. And we go to a flop. The flop is 3, 6, 7 rainbow. No diamonds. So I don't really have much. I have a gut shot, but that's pretty much about it. But in my opinion, I think this board can only really favor the big blind. I don't think there's a lot of hands that'll love this board when the button calls, aside from like sets that were flopped, which like for sure they're not going to fold that. But I think a lot of the Broadway combos that they'll call with, and like some like ace jack stuff like that, is just going to be miserable on this board. So when it checks, when the small blind, when the big blind checks to me, I decide to throw out a c-bet here. I'm assuming that if I can get the button to fold and the big blind didn't really hit this board, then I can just take it down. So I lead out for about a third of the pot, so about 2 big blinds, and the button calls and the big blind folds, which is actually a really good result. So we go to the turn, and the turn is a board pairing 3, so doesn't really change much. And at this point, I think I have 2 options. I can either like check, give up, or I can keep blasting. And I think it's really good to keep blasting for the same reason I said before. Like, they just have a ton of Broadway combinations that whiff the board, and I think they just might be floating a lot of the time. So I decide to rep the overpair here, and I go pretty big. I bet about 3/4 pot, so I bet about 7.5 big blinds. and the button tanks for quite a while and then eventually lets it go. So it feels really good to get that through with just ace high. It was a really solid chip up, and that really helped me just like kind of fold throughout the rest of the card death and make it to the next spot. Okay, so this next hand is just amazing. There's literally no other way to describe it other than as amazing. So pretty much what happened, I was card dead for a couple levels, blind down to about 25 big blinds, and I get table changed. So I don't have a read on anybody at this table, brand new table. I sit down and under the gun, and I look down at Jack 9 of clubs, my favorite hand. Of course I'm playing it, so I min raise, it folds all the way to the big blind, and they decide to call. And the flop comes in absolute dream. It is king 10 queen, 2 hearts, 1 diamond. I have the Jack 9 of clubs, so I don't have any hearts, but I just flopped the second nuts. So obviously I'm very happy. I'm trying to get the money in. The big blind checks to me, and on this board, because I don't have any flush draw, and because like an ace on the turn is really scary, or a 9 or a jack, I don't really want to see any of those cards, so I decided to lead out for a somewhat larger size. I bet 3 big blinds instead of like the normal kind of 1.5 or 2 I would do. And the big blind then asks how many chips I have behind, which is music to my ears. So I display my stack. I'm trying not to act too nervous or too excited. And then, to my surprise, the big blind just goes, okay, I'm all in. I couldn't snap call quick enough. I snap. And before I show my cards, the big blind goes, do you have the nuts? So he just like puts me on ace jack immediately for some reason. And I say no, but I got the second nuts. And I show the jack 9, and I don't think anyone could guess what this person would show. They show jack 4 of hearts. So they literally went all in as a bluff with a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. So whatever, it's like a 50 big blind pot at this point, and I'm really hoping to hold. And the turn is an offsuit 10, and then the river is an offsuit 4. It's just clean. I hold, double up, and oh, what a great spot. And yeah, let's go on to the next one. All right, so we're a little bit deeper in the tournament now. I think there's about 25 people left at this point, and remember, the final table makes the money, so we're getting pretty close. We're almost at final 2 tables. And action folds to me, and I see ace 10 offsuit in the button. And this hand is like very strange, because what happens is as the dealer's dealing the cards, he actually flips one face up as he's dealing it to me and reveals it's the 10 of diamonds. And then that becomes the burn card, and I get dealt an extra card. And then I look down at ace 10 offsuit. So it's like not great that A, I would have had pocket 10s and I got downgraded to ace 10. And B, a 10 is now burned, so I can't hit a 10 really. Like, the odds are less likely. So I'm kind of unsure what to do with this information. I definitely feel like the ace 10 is weaker than it should be now. But action folds to me in the button, and even with the burn 10, I still think the hand's too strong to just fold, so I raise. The small blind folds, and the big blind calls, and we see a flop. So I've got ace 10 off, and the flop comes jack, jack 10 with 2 clubs, and I do not have any club in my hand. So it's crazy to me that a 10 still rolled off on the flop after one was burned and I have one in my hand. But there you have it. The big blind checks. I go for a small c-bet, as I think you should with your whole range on this board. The paired boards, you just don't want to be betting big. So I bet small. I bet about 2.5 blinds. And the big blind jams. Just snaps it in. And I went into the tank for a little while here, and I was just trying to figure out pretty much in this situation, do they have a jack or do they have a draw? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they just won't have a jack here that often, especially on the stack size. They're not going to be going all in when they hit trips and I'm betting into them. They're going to be trapping a little bit more. They're either going to be calling and hoping I can continue bet, or they're going to be raising small. So I think the all-in size means that they really don't have a jack that often, and it's more likely a flush draw. So I decide to flick it in. Pretty much for my tournament life, we've got about even stacks here. We're sitting on about 20 blinds. And the opponent shows queen 8 of clubs. So they have a gut shot and a flush draw. Turn is a deuce of diamonds. Beautiful. And the river is a black card. Oh, it's the 6 of spades. So I get bailed out there. I hold for really big double up. Back up to above 40 bigs, feeling really good. We're almost down to the final 2 tables. And so the unfortunate thing about this tournament is it is a pretty fast structure, and people kind of slow down in the later levels because they want to take a really long time with their decisions, which means you don't really get to play a lot of hands before blinds go up, which means it kind of becomes a shove fest. So that's pretty much what happened. We were down to about 15 players, and everyone's around between 10 and 20 blinds, and people are just shoving left and right. So there's really not much hand history to go over at this point further. I got dealt king queen off a couple times. It folded to me. I shoved, got folds. There was one spot where the big stack decides to raise to a somewhat large size, like they raised a 3.5x pre, and I was sitting on 8 blinds with ace 8 off, and I know I'm probably supposed to jam, but I decided to fold, and the raiser showed that they had ace 4 offsuit, so it probably wasn't a good fold in hindsight. But yeah, we got there. We make the final table, and then on the final table is when I just start sun running. So I come into the final table like 8 out of 9 in terms of chip count, and I get dealt ace king, go all in, get called by 9s, double, hit an ace on the flop. Next hand, I get dealt ace king again. I go all in again. I get called by pocket 10s. The run out is 6, 6, 3, 4, ace. Smash the river. And yeah, now I'm just cruising. And then the final table proceeds. A lot of shoves, a lot of folds. I don't really do much. Those 2 ace king hands were pretty much the biggest spots of the final table that I played. And somehow, some way, people just keep getting eliminated. This one guy with the biggest stack, and he just starts knocking everybody out. And I'm just sitting there folding, making pay jumps, until we get down and we're 3-handed. It's mayhem. We're all super short. We're all just waiting to go all in. Finally, I find a spot. I'm on the button. I have ace 2 offsuit. I've got about 5 blinds. The big blind's got about 5 blinds, and the button has all the rest of the chips. So I shove the ace deuce. The big stack was already folds the small blind, and then the short stack in the big blind decides that he has to call with 10-9 suited, and the ace deuce holds. We get a clean run out. We're heads up, and I'm really thinking I can win this tournament. So we finally get heads up. First place is 5K. Second place is 3650. So I'm already super happy with the result, but I would love to make a huge comeback here with my 10 blinds and come back against like the 100 blinds that the chip leader had. So we start battling, and unfortunately I am just completely card dead. I get dealt queen 4 off, and he jams, and I have to fold. Next hand I get 9-6 offsuit, and I try to limp, and I get jammed on again. And so I realize I'm just going to be getting jammed on pretty much in every spot, so I'm going to have to take an aggressive line. But I get dealt 4-2 offsuit the next hand and have to fold that. And then the next hand, I get queen 5 of diamonds, and because there's a big blind ante, I'm down to like 4 blinds at this point, and he shoves again, and I just have to call it off here, because otherwise I'll just have no shot. The big stack shows pocket 5s, so he dominates my queen 5 of diamonds. The run out comes with 1 diamond, a jack, and a 9, so I've got 2 backdoor draws, but then the turn is the last 5 in the deck, pretty much making me draw dead. And that's the tournament. We shake hands. That was it. I get the payout. So final result, it was a $240 buy-in. Tournament lasted about 8 hours, and I profited, well, I got a cash of $3,650. So it was about a $3,500 profit, or a $3,400 profit. That makes more sense. Yep. So really happy with the run. I'm just super excited to get such a deep run and play some live poker, which I love. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Let me know if you like this sort of hand review. Let me know if you think like there's anything you would have done in these situations differently. And yeah, stay tuned for the next video where we'll be back on the online grind. So thanks for watching.